Thank you for having me, this awesome JLab organizers and the conference. It's really, I felt how it's spread the love for the content and the speakers and the announcement, everything. I love it. I love it really. So, and it's my pleasure to have you here as attendees and become a speaker for you guys. So I will not introduce myself because Sana almost did everything. So just my name is Mohamed Taman, and let me just share with you if you would like to have most of my, this is my publications, and I write frequently nowadays for Java magazine. So you will find a lot of articles, especially this also content you will find with a lot of examples on Java magazine in two parts. So you'll find here I'm representing some examples, and also on Java magazine article you'll find different examples. I ran through the production system, so you will have a lot of ideas how to use this optional class. Why? Yes, you can catch me here. You can take a picture, and they will send this link of presentation on the channel in Discord. So you will have everything, and they will get back to this at the end. So let's start. Or just search my name, Mohamed Taman, and Google, and you'll find everything. So I tried to compose this presentation as a set of questions, and from the developers, coaching people, working with people, code reviewing, all of these kind of things that I did with my team or other teams or for different companies, I always received questions. And then all these questions, I was writing them down. Then I found they are always falling into these 5 categories. So sometimes people use optional, and especially if you know optional, and definitely we use it with streams and lambda streams so much, but we don't know how to use it effectively and why it's out there already exists. Why we have added it to Java 8 at the upfront? Why we need it? So I will give you a hint about this. So let's go through each category of these questions and answer what the people were asking and what I have seen during this coaching and code reviewing and learning about even myself from others and from the API itself and how it is benchmarking and everything. So let's say first question is, people say like, oh man, I'm using optional, but sometimes I get null pointer exception and it shouldn't be happening because I'm using optional. Okay, it shouldn't happen based on how you use optional class actually. If you would like to remember something, I found something like this, code like this, like, okay, if you didn't find, for example, there is a lot of code happen here, and if you don't have an employee, you just assign it to null as all days. So you have a reference, but you are using optional. Optional is a container. It's not meant to be null. It should represent the value presence, either it exists or not. So you cannot do like this. Definitely, if you say optional dot, boom, null pointer exception. So this is why it's very easy. If you don't have anything, you should initialize it with empty. Empty will create for you an empty optional, and it will be safe for you when you just access any method inside optional class. So I know some of these things will be trivial for you, but when we go more deep and deep, you will see that yes, it's affecting my way of using optional. But I have to mention all the cases because I have seen it frequently repeated. So let's see another case. And people, it's not might related to the null pointer exception, but it just throwing an exception. It's the same. So you find something like this. Okay, I have an optional and I would like to get the value. So you call get. Okay, and you know, if you are working with Spring and you have your repository API, any single content like find by ID or whatever, find by name, it will return for you an optional. And this optional, you can from optional using get method, you can definitely get the value, but avoid doing this. Why? Because simply Git will throw null point, no such element exception. So you have to avoid this. In order to use it in optimal way, you have to check about the presence of the value first. If it's okay, you are going to get it. If it's not, you are going to say empty, returning the optional or whatever the value that you would like to return, or do something when the employee is not exist. But don't call Git directly, because if the content is not present, it will throw no such element exception directly to you. So you have to avoid it. Let's see another question, and or something to avoid. Don't use null. Sometimes we need to use null because the API is forcing us to do it. So sometimes when you use reflection or use dynamic instantiation of your classes, and then you would like to invoke a specific method on that class. So method of invoke, it has two cases here. If it's the method is a static, you don't have to have an instance of the class. So it might be null, no problem. But if it's not a static method, you need to have an instance of the class in order to call that method dynamically. So, for example, here, it's a proper way of coding, but it's just a way of we can reduce this code and to avoid this null and make it safe. So you can see that here I have the method, then I get instance of the class, and I check if the class is present. Okay, I can invoke it because the method will invoke this instance. I get from the method instance of the class here. And it will be, if it's not empty means it's instance, and then I can get the instance of the class and I can invoke my method because it's instance method. If it's not, and this is an empty, I will call the method directly because it's not part of, it's a static method. So to avoid such a case, or at least make it more safer and less boilerplate, we can use it like this. We can use my class instance or else. So we can use or else null, because if the instance is exist, it will return it to the invoke method. If it's not, it will return null by this help of or else. So this is very important. And also I would like to mention something here, which is you will find me just sitting here since Java 8 or since Java 9. So when you read this as a content or as a reference reference card for you, so you know which method of or else or get or whatever it is introduced, so you can avoid it if you are still using Java 8. You know which method you can use and which cases. And then if you are using Java 9 and 10 and forward, you will find some methods related to that versions. So you don't try something in Java 8 and it will fail because it does not exist. So this was about how to avoid getting null and how to use null in a wise way. The second question is, okay, sometimes I always use get is present, then get, is present, then get. So I would like to consume my value, or what to do if there is no value. So it's always I have to check first, and if it's not exist, do something is if else, if else, if else. Now we have a bunch of methods that can help us in a primitive way also. So let's say that we have case like this. So as I told you, don't use is present get pair for setting or returning a value. So if we have a case like this, and if we would like, we have a status and we would like to check about the status, and we say normally, if it's the status is not present, it's still running or something like this, I can, or the user does not have any kind of status, I would like to return default status, like user status as we have declared it, like unknown, I don't know. So instead of doing such a thing, we can easily use or else as we have mentioned before. And we can just in one line do it like this. So we use or else and we pass the constructed or reconstructed. Bear in mind, this word already constructed default object or values, and I will explain to you why. Okay, so it's not computed, it's nothing, it just something that already exists and I would like to return it. Okay, and this is exist definitely since Java 8. And avoid using or else for setting or returning a computed value. What? So how can I return a value if I would like to have another value? You just told us more that use or else as here, right? But bear in mind that this now is a function computing some values. Imagine that the most famous case that when we are using, like, for example, we have a REST API and we have some of our API values or calling values like database, like employees or departments or some values set in the cache. And then we have the cache and we have the database. And we would like first to check the cache. If it's not exist in the cache, okay, it's definitely useful to go to database to fetch the data and then put it in the cache. If it's not, if it's exist in the cache, just get it from the cache and return. Here we can call it computed because if we call the database, if we found the value in the cache, we don't need to go to the database to open a connection, to make the call and waste a cycle and resources. This is why I'm telling you, avoid using or else in such computed cases, just only for constructed. So what to do, Mohammed here, what to use? Simply you can use or else get. And also don't do this. Yes, I know that you can telling yourself or thinking about, okay, I can use if else and it will not call the second case unless it is the value is not present. No, shorter way, as I told you, you can use it like this or else get, because get also expecting from you to pass as a supplier, and supplier is lazy. It will not be called unless it invoked. So in this case, I will make my API call, go to the cache first, and then return, or else go to database. So what will happen here? What will happen here is when you call the cache and the value is in the cache, it will be returned quickly, and there is no call will happen to this computed status value. If you remove or else get and just use or else, if you have the value in the cache, also the database call will be invoked. And this is a performance hit. So avoid using or else with computed value, only with static constructed values. So to avoid any kind of just calling, because it will be called either ways. So with static values, it doesn't matter because it just, string or something. It already created something that will not make a call for you. For any other things which is expensive and could take time and resources, just use or else get. And this is already exists for you since Java 8. Another things, sometimes, yes, we don't need to return default value. We need to return to throw an exception. And this is very famous when we do REST API services, because we would like to return to the user no element exists, or not found, no user found, or no content exists, or whatever it is. Authentication prohibited, authorization is not allowed. All of these we always tend to throw exception with proof of messaging and then with status code, and it will be managed for us to return like a JSON message describing what happens behind. So yes, we don't have to return value always. We need to throw. So don't do this, as I told you. You use if is present and get to get the status or throw an exception. We have easier way to use it. Just use or else throw. So if the status exists, it will be returned normally, and if it's not, it will throw an exception of the kind of no such element exception. But somebody will ask me, man, you just told us that we could have custom exceptions, right? Yep, we could have custom exceptions. So what to do in this case? Very easy, guys, because, and by the way, or else throw exists since Java 10. So what to do if I have Java 8 also? Two questions here. What if I would like to throw different custom exception, and also now I'm using Java 8. I can't use this. So we have a method for you because you are our dear developer. So yes, as I told you, don't do this to throw your custom exception because I found also people using it. So I have to mention it because it's repeatedly, because they know about optional and they learn about is present and get. Then they use it everywhere. They don't learn about the others. So one of the key that as a good developer or in your learning in your career, it just when you see new class, for example, I usually go to the class start to study all the methods. What is instance variables? What is static variables? Static methods? What for which version? Because I have to help my team. So to avoid using different. So if you read something new and your JDK is different, you have to know which method, how this method could help me in doing list coding or writing list code, verbs code. So this is a great way of learning about specific classes, just not what you read or snippet of code that you see is present and get, and then you spread all your code using these kind of just two methods to solve all your problems. So in this case, definitely we are going to use or else throw, and you can, it will take a supplier of kind of the exception. So definitely if you don't like to pass a method, or sorry, a message, you can call method reference. Here like lambda reference method calling here like this, just a legal state exception or null pointer exception or whatever exception like, and refer with the new or just new and your exception and the message that you would like properly to store. And this is, as I told you, exists since Java 8, so you can use it safely and to customize your exceptions. It's less boilerplate from the two previous examples. Another thing here, this is how when you would like to consume and what to do when there is no value. So sometimes we return default value as we learn, or computed things as in case of a cache and database, and or throwing an exception in case of doing REST, or like to raise an exception to mention that the content does not exist or whatever it is. But sometimes, yes, we have a value, and also we would like to learn about how to effectively consume this optional value with different methods in an effective way. Don't just use is present get, is present get. And there is sometimes different way. Let's jump in for this category. And I just mentioned this, if I like. So if it's present, definitely you would call get, because if you call get directly, it will return for you null pointer, no such element exception. And here in the other part of else, you did nothing. So if you'd like just to avoid this, easily we can use if present, not present. So if the value present, just do something. If it's not, nothing will happen. That's it. Very easy, right? And you can also here pass any kind of supplier message, so it will run for you. So in this case, I would like just to present if the value is present, or to log or something like this. I don't need to do something. I just need to log or to mention that yes, I found, or not to found, something, whatever. But this is based on the presence of the value, and it's available in Java. Another thing is, don't use this is present get, and now you memorize it, you will hate it, but there is sometimes we can use it to execute an empty based action if value is not present. What does it mean? I will check if the status is present, I will do something else, I will do something else. Because it's not found. I can reduce this boilerplate code by using if present or else. So if the value is present, just print it. If it's not, just say status not found. This is sometimes. Yesterday I was doing some services here, developing like airline flight simulator advisor, and I have to upload like 2 files containing airports and routes. and then to find the cheapest flight based on the routes and prices and how it's connected, airports and lines. Then I have the case that we need to I need to also, based on the airport, I would like to check about to check if the countries exist, because in database I have foreign keys and the file is just a static, and I use this method if present. So in if present branch, which is system without println, I just mentioned that I was checking about the country or city does not exist in the database. If it exists, just return for me that country or city so I can use its own ID in the airport. If it's not, just create it. And then when you create it, get me the new created ID in order to assign it to the airport. So I use it for something in production like this. So if present or else is very handy, because I was checking if this exists, okay, return. If it's not exist, just create it and then return the value to me. So this is about if I would like to do some actions based on the presence of map. So also don't use our lovely pair of is present and get to sit and return other optional when nobody. Sometimes we not just need to get the value inside the container, our container, which is optional. We need to return an optional actually. So we use it like this. We have constructed a default status with binding. Yep, and then I use it, I present, return it, because my message returning optional is string, and they would like to keep the contract and return the optional. So I return it like this. So don't do this because we have this boilerplate code, and we can use also or else get. Don't do this because you have to create also optional of type string, of binding, and you have to do this. There is another one method which is lovely with this, which is or, optional or already return an option of this type. So you can use like this status or default status. If it's present exists, it will be returned as an option of string. If it's not, it will return default optional of this and wrap around optional with of type string. So also without constructing this line to make it less boilerplate, we can do this like this, optional of this value. Optional of creating an optional of that value. So it will return optional of type string containing binding, and it will be returned if it's not exist in the status, or if status does not present. And it's available since Java 9. So don't use is present and get with lambdas. Why? Consider something like this. So we have optional, we have the product, and we have the stream. We did filter and find first. And sometimes I found that people doing like this, okay, if it's present, give the name. If it's not found as a default value. And they don't learn about that find first actually and find any or these kind of methods actually returning an optional. So you are breaking the optional chain, lambda chain. And also avoid doing this. It's breaking the chain also. Don't do something like a stream and you give the price and find first. Then you have a map, return product that maybe you like just to transform it. Then or else to, and then you return not found. So you don't do to this because this map is related to optional. It was not related to streams because optional have map has maps, and we will learn about it. So much more productive, as you might imagine, it will be like this: find filter, find first, put map, give the name because it's already the product item, and then convert it to just a name. And if you found it, it will be okay. It's not just or else not found. And you have all your code in one step. Great. Don't check for the value to throw an exception. Sometimes we like to check if the values exist or not, and then we throw an exception based on this. So we do this. If is present or the cart contain the product, doesn't contain the product, it just throw a new no such element exception. So we don't have to do this. We can use or else throw with lambdas quickly. So we can do it like this. Card it's filtered, so you can filter or else throw. So it will filter. If it exists, it will be returned. If it's not, you can throw or else no such element using this. Or as I told you before, you can or else, and then you can pass your customized exception. So sometimes we overuse things. So people like tend to, okay, I will use optional for whatever it is. So because it's checking about the nullability and everything, and it's safer. But this is overusing because you are using object first of all, and this object contains some values based on the things, and you are complicating the stuff and creating another object, and you have a lot of checks out there here. So simply just get back to whatever you use. If the status is equal to null, return pending. If it's not, just return the status, because it's not optional at all. It's just your method returning a string. So why to have to wrap it inside optional to check about nullability and then constructor and then get the value from the, oh, it's complicated, man. Just be straightforward and doing like this. Question number 4. This is very important because, oh my God, how can I use optional while designing my API? Yes, there is a lot of anti-patterns people used, and I noticed, and sometimes I was thinking about myself. So don't declare any field of type optional. Optional. If you get back to the original definition of optional, optional is a container class meant to be used as a return type for the methods. That's it, return type. It's not meant to be method argument. It's not meant to be constructor argument. It's not meant to be an instance variable like this, or in declaring fields, because it's very complex for us to do something like this. And we're trying to do this because we would like to say that sometimes if the value is optional, like zip code, and then just only what we would like to do is return empty because it might exist or not. Don't do this. It's complicated. And also you have to know that optional does not implement serializable. It's not intended to be used as a property for Java beans. So this is, if you're going to transfer this object or you're going to serialize it or persist it or something, it will not work for you. Okay, so simply stating, use the normal objects for your optional, and you can assign value of empty if you would like to have this. Another anti-pattern is don't use optional constructor arguments because it's add complexity to the caller. Whenever anyone would like to call and you're trying to avoid null, I can pass to your constructor null and override optional. And wherever you're trying to call optional, it will throw null pointer exception. So it will not make you safe. It will not guarantee the safety for you from having null pointer exception in that case. And also it will complicate your code, because for me, I have to create an optional of type string and wrap the value of the postal code or postcode inside that optional to create an employee. Wow, I just have mentioned a lot of creation while I'm talking to just create. So don't do this. And this method is the only method that is correct. Because yes, optional is meant to be used as a return type. So what to do? Simply, just like this. If you'd like to check about nullability, you have the objects class, and it's out there since Java 8, and you can use require null, and you check about the name if it's required, and the postal code it's not required, maybe null, so you leave it. And then if you would like to return the value, and if it's of type null, and you would like to wrap it in empty optional, you can use optional of nullable and the postcode, because it might be null. So what happens here of nullable will check. If it is null, just create an empty optional and return it. If it's not equal to null, wrap this postcode around optional of its type and return. with, in our case, it's optional upstream. Agreed? Let's go to different case, guys. Using optional, the same in setters is another anti-pattern. So don't use it, as we don't use it for constructors. Constructor is a method, actually, special type of methods. And then we cannot use it for methods. It's complication, as I have mentioned. And if you'd like to check about nullability, you can check it inside your method. And also, if you'd like to be safe to return the value safely, you can use of nullable, as I have mentioned here, like this. And your method will become so simple as you don't add any complexity to your team, use your API. Also, as a method argument is another common mistake. So imagine this, how the call looks like complex. I have a render customer, I have a cart, and the render, it might be exist or not. And they would like to avoid optional, and then also the string, the name is important for me, and I have wrapped with two optional. Wow, oh my God. And I check about cart nullability, and I throw illegal argument exception. Then I would like to check about render. This is what I would actually, I did this, or the guy did this because this check, it will look elegant. So if it's not exist, I will throw this illegal argument exception with my message, and then check about the customer. If it's not exist, just assign this value to it. And when I would like to call it, amazing. I have a cart, I have this big declaration, and also optional with empty because it might exist or not. Wow, why to complicate all of this? For me, guys, just make it simple like this. Just leave it as it is, and I will check normally. And the object require null or else get, it will check the name, and if it's null, it will return for me anonymous. And if it's not null, it will assign the value for our customer in an elegant way. And my method call will be simply like this. See, don't overuse. Also preferable sometimes to use, I'm showing you here different kind of using, if you like, instead of just boilerplate code, you to throw a legal argument exception, or because it's null, checking about null. So it's much easier to use it like this. Require null, and cart cannot be null, render cannot be null, and you just enhancing your way of doing your functionality without using efforts. Okay, great. Don't use optional to return empty collections. Yes, don't do this. Optional of list of, because already list, set, map, all of these have methods to this. So don't do this. It's very, very abused, and it's not meant to be this, because optional is very rich to have. You can rely on collections, but empty list, empty map, and empty sets. So if you have something like this, it's very easy. If items equal to null, collection.empty list or set or map, or return items if it's not equal to null. Okay, and also you can do something like this. No, you don't can do. See, avoid using optional inside of the collection. I would like to avoid null, so I will try to wrap the value you are trying to put of the type optional, so it will be always safe to get it. I can also pass the value null. And what you did here is performance and footprint for the memory, because you have introduced another layer of object wrapping. You wrapped your problem with another problem. Actually, you didn't solve it. So it's performance hit because there is another object out there to evaluate and consider, and it's very costly. So instead, you can do something like this. We have hash map, use your things. If you would like to check, the map has a very fancy method, and we can implement a method called get, and it take our map and the string key to check, and we can say like this, map get or default. So map, it will get the key and the value if the key exists. If it's not, it will turn not found. So if we have these cases, in this case, we will have We have I1, yes, it will return true. We have I2, it will turn null. In that case, I3 does not exist inside the map. It will return not found. So never ever use optional as a value. And also, you can use contains key, you can use trivial implementation by extending hash map, you can use also Java 8 compute if absent, and Apache common defaulted map. Don't do this ever, ever. I have seen it. Use map of optional of string and string, so key will be optional, or optional of optional string and construct. It's more worse. Okay, guys, use optional of nullable instead of method. When to use this or this? Okay, let's have this. Avoid using optional of if you are not guaranteed that the item name, it might be null. Sometimes you can give the name, item name. Sometimes it could be null, sometimes not. It's not constructed. It's not always constant. So what will happen if this item is null? It will throw null pointer exception because it will not be able to give the value. So this will throw null for you. So how to make it safe is just to use of nullable. And in the other case, if we are going to use this instead of this, so if we have something like this, this code doesn't add any value. It's only add another check. It will always check of this value equal to null or not. So we have one check extra. We do just using wrong message. In this way, it just will return it with an optional and it will return. So there is no risk for null pointer exception here. But if you are not guarantee of the value are going to pass here, maybe it will be null or not, as our methods, the getter methods, use of nullable. Avoid optional. Sometimes we use optional with numbers. So we use something like this, optional of integer, long, double, and we use this. This is very expensive because it's doing boxing and unboxing. And you know that boxing and unboxing big operations is very, very, very expensive and performance hit. So we are lucky to have such cases that optional introduced for us, optional int, optional long, optional double as a wrapper classes. So there is no boxing and unboxing. If you have numbers and you would like to deal with that, to avoid boxing and unboxing, it's preferable to use the generic option. Don't use the generic optional, use the non-generic optional like for int, long, and double. The last question, okay, now I know how to consume values, how to avoid null pointer exception, what to do when there is no value is present, and what about the anti-pattern to not use optional with. And now I would like to extend, I'm doing a lot of functional programming and I have optional and I'm using Spring and database heavily, and I do some, you know, excuse me for this. It's not Corona, and if it's Corona, even you don't have to worry because we are virtual. This is one of the benefits of being virtual. I'm joking. It's just a cough because of the cold. So I would like to use optional. What I can do more here is, let's see what we can do with optional. So there is no need to unwrap optional for asserting. You are using testing, and inside testing, you are assert equal, assert that, all of this. So if you have the optional and you would like to check about the value inside the optional, you don't have to call get, because actually you can do it like this. Why? Because by default, equal methods are overridden inside optional to check the values, not the reference, as either object. So it's easy to do this. Why I'm saying this? Because you will find another common case that people using in identity sensitive operation like equality. And you are expecting that option 1 and option 2 are going to be equal and return true, and you are wrong. It will return false, and you have to start to debug. You understand until you understand that optional is an object. So you are trying to check the reference, not the content. So what to do in this case? There is, as I told you, use equals. because equals overridden inside the optional to check the values, not the reference. Great. What if I would like to reject a value? So I'm checking about something, and if I don't want it, I would like to reject it. So I say, okay, if password is present, okay, what to do? I'm getting a password, and it's of type optional, and I would like, it's okay, you pass for me the password, you have it, or you get it from the database or from the call, and then if it's present, please get the value and check the length if it's equal greater than 5. If it's not, return false. If it's okay, return true. So if you like something like this in this boilerplate, optional has a very great method, same like streams, it has filter. So you can say password with filter p, which is my password. The length is if it's greater than 5, and if it's a present, it will return either true or false for you, and that's it. And even you can avoid this kind of declaration, optional of string, and even you can use the code user, the get password, the filter, and you just return the value in one line. Return a boolean if the optional is empty via is present if using Java 11. Don't use this if you are using Java 11, just to check about the emptiness of your cart or your items. So I will use not if it's present, not if not the cart is present means it's empty, just return boolean is false or not. So if you are using Java 11, you can use is empty directly without any. It's a trivial, but it makes sense as a semantic value, as a code readability more. And it's available since Java 11. The last two questions here was don't use is present to check the value first, then transformation. The same concept like streaming. So when we use map and Flatmap, so but here are different. So we would like to see that we have the upper name, and we would like to transfer it. So what we do, we would like to check if it's present as a lower name, yes. As a name, for example, and its value is lowercase, I would like to first to get an optional of this value, and also optional of this lower name transform it to uppercase. And if it's not exist, I will return optional with empty or optional of nullable of this one. This is very big use of this. You can use map and Flatmap to transform value directly. So we can use it like this. Lowercase dot map string to uppercase, and you will have optional of string containing the new value. And also you can use map to transfer values like this. Don't avoid doing something like this. Prefer to use map. So what I'm doing here is first I get my product, dot stream, dot filter, the get price, if it's okay, define first. Same example that we used before with filter and first, find first or else. You know, because find first is returning optional, and we can definitely chain it directly. But some people doing like this, then you declare a name and you check the presence and you transfer. If it's not found, you don't find the product, and you are here calling the get name, and the get name is returning a string. So what to do in this way? Okay, we can substitute it like this. So here, filter, find first, map, you call the method because it's returned. It will return optional of this name, of the returned product name. Then you transfer it again to uppercase. If it's not found, finally it will return not found. And simply in one line, and you don't have to break your chain. So also we can use flat map. But this is the same call. Find first, then I would like or else not to uppercase. Okay. And Why I'm doing this? Because name is a string, so we don't need to return an optional. So I get the product and I get the name, and if it's not exist, or else dot, and if it exists, I can return the value as a uppercase. So, and be aware that here optional a get name is returning an optional of string, not string. So this is why I call or else here. And then the value will be returned as a string, then I transform it. So what I can do here is the same call like map, but be aware of the flat map. I used flat map here with product with get name. Why? Because the get name actually return optional of string, not optional. Flat map is already returning the content of the map. So if you are using map here, it will return optional of string. So it will be wrapped with additional options. So in this case, if it's returned already optional of string, I need optional of string. I don't need to wrap it with one more optional inside one more option. So avoid using map directly with anything returning optional because it will be wrapped. And if you call another map like this, it will be optional of map. So it will be complicated to give the value. So we use flat map when the value is just optional. I don't like to wrap it anymore. The same like the previous example for flat map. And here, if the value is just the value and I would like to wrap it inside an optional to use another additional methods like this, yes, I can use the map. So the only difference, as I told you here, flat map is just extracting the value inside the optional, and the map is extracting the value and return it as a wrapped value with additional option. Okay, last question, and I will finish. Do we need actually to change? Sometimes we would like to change. It's not about find first, find any. No, there is a string, and they would like to jump inside the string to use optional. So how to chain both stream API and optional? So let's consider this example. Instead of doing something like this, so here I have the products and the product is list, so I can create a stream, and I would like to map this fetch product by ID. And what product by ID does, it's getting the string and it's trying to get the product. It's not exist. It will be it will be empty optional because I'm returning nullable. And then I check if the optional is present. If it's present, then continue mapping, get the value and collect it to the list. So value is list of products. So I don't need to do this. I would like to hook inside this call with option, simply stating that we can use it like this. So product.stream map to this and fetch the product by ID. It will return optional of product. Definitely, I will use Flatmap in this case. Optional stream. What does optional stream do here? It's first check if the values exist, so it will continue. So we get rid of filter. So map or Flatmap doing the filter job also. So you don't have to use filter. And also returning an optional, a stream of one value, which is the product. So now the Flatmap will return a stream by hooking the stream method of optional. You have optional of that product, content of the option. And then you can collect it to the list. And it's very easy. Also, we can convert optional directly to the list like this. If you have optional, then you can say optional.stream.collect. You transferred your optional to a stream of one element, which is inside the optional, and you can collect it to collect it to list or set or whatever you like, because it's finally you hook it, you transfer it to Stream API, then you can change the map, but it's only for one element. Did you get the idea? So by reaching here, I almost finished. And for any questions, we can jump into the where I would like to go, jump to Confi.